And welcome back to another episode of the Double Doing Podcast. My name is Brenden. Thanks so much for tuning in today. We are talking NFL draft here and my favorite interview every year. And this is Dane Brugler of The Athletic. He is a draft analyst there. He is the author of The Beast, the best draft guide in the world. Dane, how we doing?
I'm doing well. I appreciate the kind words. It's been fun now that the Beast is out, and all the feedback, all the debate and conversation around it. It has been a lot of fun, and so we're under a week away from the draft, so it's almost time.
So I just submitted a about 1,700 word article breaking down 10 prospects for the score. Yours is 385,000 words, just to put in perspective. Like I was laughing with a friend. I'm going like, Dane is a machine, man. Like I was stressing over this little article. There's 305,000 words in his. Like it's truly a remarkable accomplishment. You should be very proud of the work that you've done. So let's talk about it. How was this class? So how was this beast compared to other years' beasts?
Um, the past few years have been more challenging than others because just figuring out who's in the draft. With the so many changes at the college level between NIL and transfer portal and the extra COVID year, not every player is going to exactly tell you what they're doing right away, and so it's a lot of work just to figure out who are the players in this draft. Obviously, we know Caleb Williams and Drake May and Jaden Daniel. We know those guys, but some of these mid to late round picks or even the PFAs. I mean, there's over almost 2,000 players in the draft guide, and it's inexcusable if there's someone in there that's not in this draft class. So doing all the work to make sure that the players in there are actually in this draft class, and then making sure, of course, having the pro day testing and all the NFL verified stuff for them, it's a source of pride with me. And so the last few years, that's been a lot of work. Now, next year, hopefully we won't have to worry as much about the COVID year, and so that'll help. But still, with the transfer portal and NIL and how that shapes the draft class, it's something that as college continues to evolve and their rules, that's going to affect the draft and how teams scout, and it'll be really interesting.
As a draft ageist, I didn't love this draft because there's a lot of older guys in this draft,
Yeah.
right? Because of the last year kind of eligibility. So I wanted to ask you about the number 2 overall pick. Let's jump into the draft because big talk today on social media about it. And I noticed last night the number 2 overall pick odds did swing kind of back to even with Drake and Jaden. Jaden was around a minus 200 favorite, and now it's kind of about even in every sports book you look at. So what has changed, if anything has changed over the last 24 hours? And where do you kind of see this leading to Washington and who they select at number 2?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer as to why, because I can promise you Dan Quinn's not telling anybody what they're doing. Adam Peters, new general manager, he's not telling anybody what they're doing. Now, obviously, with Jaden Daniels, there was the recent news about he wasn't thrilled about the powwow with all the quarterbacks together when they visited the Commanders. He wanted more. He thought he was getting one-on-one time. Seems like a silly thing to be too concerned with. I mean, it's just teams, if they want to do it as a group, I don't see why that would be an issue for anybody. But I don't know if that was behind it or what. But I don't know. Drake May, to me, he is the second best quarterback in this draft. But I can certainly understand how a team can come to the conclusion that Jaden Daniels is best fit for them because of just the different ways he can create explosives. He is more ready to go from the get-go, and that matters for some teams. So Jaden Daniels, I still think, is going to be that favorite, but that's based off of what other teams think and not necessarily what any of us think or know from the Commanders. So we've got a couple days left to really figure this out.
I feel like there hasn't been a lot of words or I guess rumors surrounding teams this year compared to other years. I do believe that it's something to do with maybe, I guess, scouts aren't really involved leading all the way up until the pick, right? Teams want to keep everything tight and just kind of in their own building. So like I'm assuming like Elliot Wolf has probably told no one who he likes the number 3, right? So this year kind of feels a lot different. We're not having the access to a lot of information that we've had in previous years.
And I think it's important, when we talk about these top 10 picks, especially, these are ownership picks. Okay, so what Elliot Wolf wants to do ideally might be different than what Robert Kraft wants him to do, and that creates healthy discussion and debate, and that's you want that in a war room. But at the end of the day, I think Elliot Wolf would love to trade down and gain picks, and you build this roster the right way. I just have a hard time believing Robert Kraft's going to go through another offensive season like they did last year and pass on a quarterback at 3. So the Patriots are really interesting at number 2. And then, with the Commanders, obviously we have a first-year owner. We have some evidence based off of what he's done with NBA teams, NHL. So his thumb will be on the scale, but also a first-year general manager and a defensive head coach who is his second go-around. So he probably looks at things a little bit differently as well. So that's part of all this. And then where does that fourth quarterback go? Is it the Vikings trading up? Is it the Giants making a move? Could the Broncos do something, especially if let's just say J.J. McCarthy goes 3 to the Patriots? That creates a whole new set of scenarios because I think there'll be more teams in on May, as opposed to McCarthy. So then all of a sudden, maybe the Broncos are in the mix for a trade up. Maybe the Giants are. And so that just, creates another set of dominoes that will affect how the rest of the first round plays out. So yeah, it's fascinating.
I am 100% convinced the Minnesota Vikings are taking a quarterback in the top 5. I don't know which team they're trading up for with. Is it the Chargers? Is it the Cardinals? But it just, all the signs point to that. I am fully convinced. Do you believe that the Minnesota Vikings leave round 1 with a quarterback?
It'd be shocking if they don't. Obviously, they've set themselves up for this. It was one of the worst kept secrets last year that the Vikings wanted to draft a quarterback, kind of get ahead of the whole Kirk Cousins thing. They weren't able to make it happen. The trade just didn't work out. And so this year, they've put themselves in position with the 2 first-round picks so they can go up and get a guy. Now, are they okay with that 4th quarterback? Or is it there a specific guy that they would trade up for? Maybe one guy they wouldn't? How would they feel about the secondary options? You're talking about, your Bo Nix, your Michael Penix. We don't talk a lot about them maybe going Byron Murphy, defensive tackle at 11, and then with that 23rd pick, maybe going in a direction like with a quarterback, that 5th or 6th quarterback. I don't think that gets talked about enough as a possibility if they're not able to get into the top 5. So some way, shape, or form, they're going to draft a quarterback in the first round. It feels that way. I think the most likely is a top 5. I'm just not totally sold on it because I think there will be other competition for teams to get up that far.
Okay, a couple more first round questions for you. This one may seem crazy, but Malik Nabers is literally my favorite player in this draft. I think he's the best player in this draft. Dane, talk me off the Malik Nabers ledge because I can't get enough of this kid. If I was to label a guy that's going to be an all-pro in the next 5 years, Malik Nabers might be that, even with all of the star-studded wide receivers we have. So I
got nothing. I support you. I support you 100%.
There we go, baby.
Yeah, he is my favorite player in the draft too. And I say that even though he's not my wide receiver 1, Caleb's 1 for me, best player in the draft, and then Marvin Harrison Jr. is 2, and then Malik Nabers is 3. But if Malik Nabers were in last year's draft or the year before, he would have been my number 1 overall player. He is so dynamic, an explosive play creator. Nobody had more explosive plays, catches of 20-plus yards this year than Malik Nabers. Still just 20 years old, and he led the SEC in catches each of the last 2 years. So I think it just – to those that don't like Malik Nabers, I don't understand. What is the limitation? Where is it that you're worried about him translating to the next level? Because he can get open, he catches the ball well, and then after the catch is when he can really shine and makes them things happen. So I'm really encouraged by what he put on film, the athletic profile, and then also the production. It's all kind of there that points to him being a big play weapon in the NFL. So if you're the Giants at 6, one of those quarterbacks might look appealing, but I'm not passing on Malik Nabers at that point.
I agree. I think he's you said Caleb Williams number 1. I would put Nabers 2. I think he's that good. He just moves different, man. He's got I've used this term before. It's like the cartoon characters, like the dust running behind you, like the smoke running behind you. He just moves different, and he can go up and get the contested catches. His film is littered with that. He is, in my opinion, just the most exciting player in this draft. Okay, Philadelphia Eagles. I'm an Eagles guy, so I got to ask you. They're sitting at number 22. Where do you think the Philadelphia Eagles should go with their first pick in the first round?
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if they try to move up or not. We know that they can be aggressive on draft day. Is there a certain player they'll be targeting, maybe an offensive lineman, in the mid-teens where they go up and get a J.C. Latham or a Talise Fuaga? A team like the Seahawks are always in the business of moving back. So I think that would make some sense. If they stick and pick, Amarius Mims is really interesting. I think he's the most fascinating player in the draft. 6'8", 340 pounds. The traits are off the charts. I've never seen 340 pounds look like that. It's kind of crazy, but 8 career starts, and so the body of work isn't there. But we're talking the 22nd pick. If the body of work was there, he's gone in the top 5, top 6 picks. So
Yeah, and it's not like he's a project either. Like it's an
right.
experience, not like a projection, I guess.
And that's the key, and that's what I've been saying about him is there's a difference between being raw and being inexperienced, and he is more inexperienced than raw, and that's a key point to all this. Because his first career start against Ohio State in the college football playoffs last year, he looked like he belonged. He had no trouble blocking Ohio State in that game, and he's had a lot of good tape since then. It's just it only came in 8 games, and so you have to be okay with that. But obviously, going to Stoutland U at 22 would be a great spot for him. Can sit, learn, and then take over for Lane Johnson at right tackle. I think corner is also in the mix. Quinyon Mitchell, Terrion Arnold, most likely off the board at that point. Even though I think both fit really well with what they look for at cornerback, so maybe even a trade-up option for those two guys. Cooper DeJean, obviously a player they've done a lot of work on. Does he fit with what they want to be and what they're looking for at the corner position? Possibly. He would be one of those options at 22. So, yeah, the Eagles they're interesting. We know that they like certain positions, and we know they like trenches. We know they wide receiver, corner. There are only a few positions they're going to go in the first round. And where they're picking, it could be interesting who falls to them, and maybe that determines which direction they go.
Yeah, like if there was a clear path for playing time at tackle, I think Mims would be the obvious pick. He screams Stoutland how he pick. It's just Lane and Mylott are kind of locked in those tackle positions for at least 2 years. Maybe Lane retires after 1 year. We don't know, but he's locked under contract until 2026. I don't think Mims is a guard, right? If you're drafting him to play tackle. So I think that's maybe a problem, but Eagles fans should maybe buckle up for another trenches pick. I think that's where they're going to go. The fan base wants a cornerback very badly, but I wouldn't be shocked if they land with one of the offensive linemen in the first round.
It's
I think
a deep
Mims
corner
is one of the
class. If they wanted to wait until the second round, third round, fourth round, corner is one of those positions this year that will stretch. There will be somebody in those rounds that maybe you don't love, but someone that you like and think fits your scheme and can give you quality snaps and maybe be more than that.
Okay, so we're going to dive into more of the later rounds right now. We're going to talk about my guys, quote unquote. I'm going to kind of hijack this selfishly and ask you about some of my favorite players later in the draft. I'm going to start with one that I am fascinated by. My God, he is built to be an NFL pass rusher. And that is Jal Hunt from Houston Christian University. He's grown on me a lot. The more I watch him, the more I just kind of look at the profile. SLC Defensive Player of the Year last year, 20.5 tackles for loss, 13.5 sacks over the last 2 years. Former safety from Cornell, moves to pass rusher. Tell me about Mr. Hunt.
Yeah, I mean, you love the size, 6'4", 252, over 34-inch arms, tested really well, was in the low 4.6s, jumped 37.5, and you kind of laid it out. He's in a really interesting case where, he goes to Cornell as a safety, and they kind of moved him around. Undersized. I mean, he didn't have barely any attention coming out of high school, and so he Division II offers. He finally got he had actually a walk-on offer at Florida, and there are a few other FBS teams showed love, but he's under 200 pounds. Teams weren't really sure what to do with him. Is he a linebacker? What is he going to grow into? And he eventually puts on the weight and grows into this edge rusher, and there's not a lot of nuance to what he's doing out there. This is purely a traits, athleticism pick, where it's upside. It's, okay, let our coaches get our hands on him and see what we can mold him into. But we're talking about a guy that's probably a 4th-round pick, and so at that point in the draft, that's the type of guys that you are drafting, and there's a lot of promise here. I think there will be several teams kind of crossing their fingers and toes that he might fall to them.
Yeah, he visited with the Eagles. He seems like another trenches kind of Eagles pick. So I've been following him over the last month or so, and I really like his story. Jordan McGee, linebacker from Temple. Now, this is so the linebacker position this year. I've noticed I'm falling in love with a lot more of the experienced guys, but the experienced guys don't really have the athletic traits to match. But Jordan McGee's kind of a little bit of both. Like, he's a very experienced starter at Temple. He's got good athletic movements.
Yeah, and obviously the Eagles are probably pretty familiar with Temple products being right there. But yeah, 6'1.5", 230 pounds. Tested pretty well. He was in the mid 4.5s in the 40, 35.5-inch vert. He missed part of the process. I mean, he missed the final game, and then he was not able to play in the East-West Shrine Bowl because of that bicep injury he had. And so the pre-draft process, I feel like, I don't know. There hasn't been a ton of buzz about him, but teams really like him. I mean, he led the team. He led Temple in tackles each of the last 2 years. He's really good downhill. I mean, he had something like 14 tackles for loss. I mean, he makes
Yep.
plays in the backfield because he triggers and goes. There's not a lot of hesitation when he reads it. So that speed and the reaction quickness, I really stands out with him. He's a really competitive guy, rangy. He's not the best in terms of stacking and shedding, like a guy that's going to play the mic and work off blocks and get to and sift to the ball carrier. But you let him play in space a little bit, and I think he can do some things in coverage, more so than even what we saw on film. He's a good athlete, and like I said, I think he's sometimes to his detriment. Maybe he falls for that eye candy, or he'll take the cheese sometimes. But he trusts what he sees, and he's able to get that head start. So yeah, I think somewhere probably 4th round. We're talking about him. But yeah, he's once we get to day 3, I think he'll be off the board probably pretty quickly.
Yeah, Hunt and McGee, I'm expecting like 4th round, maybe in the 3rd, but those are the kind of guys that I'm eyeing for later in the draft for the Eagles in the 4th round. Okay, one more just on the kind of my list here from my guys. Linebacker again, Cedric Gray from North Carolina. Love the Cedric Gray watching him. He doesn't have the crazy athletic tools, but just with the experience, like 366 tackles over the last 3 seasons, 105 tackles in 2022, led the ACC. He just like he looked like he knew the position well. Like all the instincts were there. And again, like linebacker for me is this year, especially like I want a guy that's got experience over the traits aspect of it. So I really like Cedric Gray. I think he's your linebacker number 6 on your board. So what do you make of Cedric Gray from North Carolina?
Yeah, I have a 4th round grade on him, and I actually feel like I'm pretty low on him compared to how a lot of NFL teams think. There are plenty of teams that like him in the 3rd round, so I think there's a very good shot he's off the board somewhere in the top 100 picks. And a lot of the reasons that you mentioned. I mean, he is maybe not a top tier athlete, but he's above average as an athlete. Good speed. He works well laterally. And he has that mentality that you want your linebacker to have, both with his awareness, but then also just the compete skills. He has over 100 tackles each of the last 3 years. So production, okay, check that box. And you feel like there's more upside in coverage than just what he put on film. He made some plays in coverage. I mean, he was mostly as a zone dropper, but you feel like there's even more there because he is a quality athlete. So, and maybe some of the same things that I said about McGee. I mean, he's not the best stack and shed. Play strength is okay, not great. So some of those things play a part in this, but I think he's a quality player, no doubt. And I think he'll probably be drafted even higher than I have him.
Gray's like Malik Washington for me. Like one of those guys I'm just struggling to figure out why he's so low on people's boards. Like Malik Washington to me is just like, whoo, like over like he had 47% of Virginia's yards last year, and it's receiving yards. Sorry, and he was just so much fun. I know he's smaller, but feels like a guy an NFL team gets their hands on is just gonna make it work. So Malik Washington's a guy I also like. Quickly before we get out of here, I'm Canadian, and there's a few Canadians in this draft that I want to talk about. Yeah. Let's start with like not a quote unquote Canadian, but Qantas Striggers from the Toronto Argonauts. How was studying CFL film for you?
Yeah, that was different. Just with the alignment, with the way that the scheme, how they wanted to attack and coverage was a little bit different because of all the motions. And yeah, it was different than your normal tape. But Stiggers is one of the best stories in the draft. So inspirational when you talk about the hand he was dealt. Nobody wanted him out of high school. He finally finds a home, but then his father passes away. He goes back home, and he's just kind of in no man's land. He's kind of lost, and then he plays 7-on-7 indoor football. And through a connection with the Argonauts, he's able to get a tryout. And not only does he make the team, but then he moves up the depth chart and he's starting and he becomes the rookie of the year. And so just an outstanding story. But because he never actually played at college, he's eligible for this draft, which is rare. We never see that happen. So, yeah, he's a guy somewhere on day 3. I think he'll come off the board and be a guy, maybe not right away. He's pretty rough around the edges, but you like the talent, you like the ball instincts and the overall production.
Illinois offensive lineman Isaiah Adams. He is from Ajax, Ontario, which I am actually from Ajax, Ontario. Okay. I'm friends with his brother. I coached a Durham Dolphins team back in the day, and Isaiah was 2 years ahead of me. He was just way bigger than everyone else back in the day. I've spoken to Isaiah a couple of times throughout the draft process. He is your guard number 6, and we were fired up to see that on your draft guide. So tell me about Isaiah Adams from Ajax, Ontario.
Yeah, put a third round grade on him. Big fan of his. I think he kind of got a bad rap because they put him at right tackle because of injuries this year, and it didn't go well. But he's not a right tackle; he is a guard, and so I think because of that, maybe teams were a little bit late coming to him as okay, as just a guard. This guy's pretty good. 34-inch arms, 6'4", 315 pounds, and yeah, and a really interesting background. Just kind of growing up playing hockey, playing basketball, and kind of it wasn't until later on that he picked up football again, and he's been able to develop into this player that is about to get drafted and has starting potential from day one. And so, yeah, big fan of Isaiah Adams. Somewhere top 125, I think, is where he's going to ultimately end up being drafted. And like I said, once you get him to camp, he's got a chance to make some noise and potentially earn a starting job.
Yeah, he's a great kid from a great family. I'm really excited, and everyone from Ajax is excited to see where Isaiah lands. But that's Dane Brugler from The Athletic. He is the author of The Beast. Dane, why don't you plug in where the listeners can read your work, where they can find you over the next week? I know it's going to be a busy next 6 days, 8 days for you, so why don't you tell the listeners where they can find your work and see you over the next couple of weeks?
Well, myself, Robert Mays, Nate Tice, we're doing the Athletic Football Show from Detroit. We'll be live the first 2 days covering every single pick as they happen. That's going to be a lot of fun. So please check us out on YouTube. And then make sure you have the draft guide for all 3 days. I promise you, if you're interested in the draft at all, you will not be disappointed that you have this resource at your fingertips as the picks are coming off the board. If you're a subscriber to The Athletic, it's included as part of it. So I think it's a pretty good value.
Dane, thanks so much for doing this, man. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Brenden.